You ever pull an all-nighter for a huge exam? You feel like you've crammed every single fact into your brain, only to have it all just vanish a week later? Yeah, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're going to dive into the science of why our brains seem like designed to forget, and more importantly, how we can use one simple, really powerful technique to remember just about anything. It is one of the most frustrating things about being human, right? You put in the work, you highlight the textbook, you make all the notes, and then, poof, the information is just gone, usually right when you need it most. So what is actually going on in there? Is our memory just broken? Well, not exactly. It turns out this is a feature, not a bug.
So scientists have a name for this. It's called the forgetting curve. And you can picture it like a really steep slide. The second you learn something new, you start sliding down, losing that information way faster than you'd think. It's basically your brain's natural spring cleaning. It's tossing out what it thinks is useless so it doesn't get overloaded. But when you're actually trying to learn something, that spring cleaning feels like the ultimate villain.
But what if I told you that you could fight back, that you could actually hack your own memory and beat the forgetting curve? See, the secret isn't about spending more hours staring at a book. It's about changing how you study. It's all about being smarter, way more strategic, and turning your brain's own rules to your advantage.
Okay, so meet the hero of our story, spaced repetition. The idea is actually beautifully simple. Instead of trying to review everything all at once, you just review it in short bursts at increasingly longer intervals. So maybe a quick review after 1 day, then again after 3 days, then a week, and so on. Every single time you recall that information, you're basically sending a little message to your brain that says, hey, this stuff is important, don't throw it away. Let's think about it this way. On one side, you've got cramming. Cramming is like dumping a whole bucket of water on a plant once a month. I mean, sure, it's a lot of water, but most of it just runs off, right? Now, on the other side, you have spaced repetition. That's like giving the plant just a little bit of water every few days. This way, the soil actually absorbs it, and the plant builds these strong, deep roots. One method gives you this short-term illusion of learning, the other builds durable, long-term knowledge.
Okay, that all sounds great in theory, doesn't it? But here's the real question. Does this stuff actually work out here in the real world, outside of some controlled lab? Can a simple technique like this really make a difference for actual students in a real classroom with all the distractions and pressures of a totally normal school year?
Well, to answer that, we're going to look at this fascinating, year-long study that took place in a real high school Spanish class. The mission was simple. Could a group of teenagers using these techniques completely defy the forgetting curve and achieve truly long-term learning?
And the scale of this experiment was just huge. I mean, this was not some week-long thing. Researchers followed these students for an entire school year. And look at this timeline. They had learning sessions spread out over months, and crucially, they were even tested after a long summer break. Now that is the ultimate test of long-term memory.
The task for the students was crystal clear. They had to learn a list of 100 new, pretty challenging Spanish vocabulary words, but just learning them was only half the battle. The real goal here was retention. The big question was, would they still know these words months and months later, after summer vacation had basically washed away all those short-term classroom memories?
So the experimental group didn't just reread a list of words. Oh no, they used a whole arsenal of modern, really engaging techniques. They were on digital flashcard apps like Quizlet, which forced them into something called active recall. That's the actual act of pulling information out of your memory. And that process, that retrieval, is what makes the memory stronger. They also turned their review sessions into games and even made their own memes to make the tricky words stick. And this is a perfect example of how they kept everybody motivated. Instead of some boring old quiz, they played games like Space Race, which turned vocabulary review into a fun competition. It totally transformed a chore into a challenge, and that kind of engagement is absolutely key for making memories last.
So, okay, we have two groups of students. One studied in a more traditional way, the other used this fun, gamified, spaced-out approach. They both learned the exact same 100 words. Then came the school year, the summer break, and the final exam. Who do you think came out on top?
So, after all that time, after the long summer break and all those fading memories, what did the final test scores actually reveal?
The results were, well, they were staggering. The control group, the one using traditional study methods, scored an average of 57%, barely passing. The spaced repetition group, an incredible 82%. That is a massive 25-point difference. They didn't just remember a little bit more. They proved that how you learn is every bit as important as what you learn.
Now, this isn't just some cool story about a classroom experiment. It's really a blueprint for anyone who wants to learn more effectively. So how can you actually apply this? It all comes down to a simple 3-step strategy.
It really just boils down to these 3 simple steps. First, space out your practice. You got to resist the urge to cram. A few focused minutes spread over a week is so much better than one frantic hour. Second, test yourself constantly. Don't just reread your notes. Use flashcards, do practice problems, try to explain the concept to a friend. Force your brain to retrieve the information. And third, make it fun. Find a way, anyway, to turn learning into a game.
And hey, do not underestimate the power of motivation. In the study, the friendly competition was a huge driver for the students. It was almost as powerful as the chocolate they sometimes got for winning. It just proves that learning doesn't have to be this lonely, boring slog.
So the next time you need to learn something new, just remember, that forgetting curve isn't your destiny. It's just a challenge waiting to be hacked. The real question is, what could you truly master if you started learning smarter, not harder?